Okay, thank you. All right, I am going to talk about making AI visible, and I love that Jamie started off with critical thinking as well as with talking about how we can sort of join the AI development race as well, along with the developers. I'm going to talk about some of those things a little bit, but also focus on more technical communication conventional roles in my presentation today. I'm going to rush a little bit because I have a lot of content to cover, but I hope I can answer any questions that come towards the end. I'm going to first talk about the background of AI and technical communication, then moving on to making AI visible. The way that I see it is there are three different ways or perspectives on AI and tech com work. One is using writing or writing with AI, other is writing for AI, and then writing about AI. Alrighty, I'm gonna go back to what I had started discussing, which is making AI visible. And I'm going to talk about some opportunities for technical writers to get into the AI development race as well. So today I'm going to cover a little bit of a background of AI and technical communication, making AI visible through three different practices. One is writing with AI, writing for AI, and writing about AI. I'm going to talk about how to make AI visible in each of these practices. I'm going to then share a heuristic on how do we evaluate the effectiveness of writing about AI specifically, and then discuss some case studies and pedagogical implications of those case studies. So just the background of AI and AI and technical communication specifically. So there are several beliefs on how tech can improve our lives, and every school, or especially engineering, tech, and STEM fields versus the humanities, have a different understanding or perspective about tech. The transhumanist is more of the tech belief that technology can transcend all our capabilities. The post-humanist is what media scholarship looks at, which is the relationship between humans and technology, and what can that tell about AI to us. And then finally, what I'm interested in is learning about the augmentation role of AI, because what we are seeing AI do is it is helping us do our tasks much faster, maybe more, some of them more accurately, some of them not so accurately. But what they're doing is basically assisting us in tasks that we humans already did always. And so I'm interested in looking at the augmentation aspect in order to not only understand what AI is doing to help us, but also how can we make AI even more effective than it is right now. Just to state this out there, the role of technical communicators is to identify knowledge gaps and close them through content. And AI technology being complex has given us a lot of opportunities to find these knowledge gaps and then try to close them. A little bit of history, emerging technologies and technical communication have this deep rooted relationship. Technologies and advanced technologies have always affected our roles. And more in terms of, again, augmentation, where we've been able to use technologies or augment technologies to do our tasks. For example, we had editors in technical communication teams forever who did all of the editing roles, copy editing, looking at grammar, making sure that the technical writers were compliant with the style guide that the company used, and so on. When spell checkers came in, the role was reduced a little bit, but then we had other compliance issues to check, and then editors never really lost their jobs, but just went into more complex editing tasks. Next is translators. Again, machine translation and natural language processing algorithms did impact the role of translation a lot. But even now, we are speaking human feedback or human in the loop in order to make sure that translation happens more accurately, despite having generative AI and all these technologies. Content strategists were always were trying to structure and design information in such a way that it would be findable and for the users. With algorithms like search engine optimization, that changed a lot. Even Google just changed the whole narrative of what content strategy was about. So we were not only just designing content and designing information, we were also sort of writing for the algorithms. For example, including metadata and URLs, designing URLs in a way that would be understood by the algorithms. Support specialists have always been around, and they are known to give customers very user specific and context specific help. With chatbots, that has changed a little bit, but even now we need support specialists to, again, do more complex tasks and help specific users with their more specific requirements. The biggest gaps that AI technology has created, just like so many advanced technologies, are that first one is reputation. While AI can increase efficiency, it can compromise a company's reputation by maybe not provide by providing maybe misinformation or which can impact the brand credibility a lot. Customers may perceive that the company is detached or indifferent to the content that is being produced by generative AI, which we don't want. Second is trust. Trust can be compromised if AI produces inaccurate, misleading, or inconsistent information. Anthropomorphism, or which is making AIs seem more human, although they may appear good or can increase trust by using certain rhetorical strategies. However, there are other issues such as the uncanny valley effect, which allows AI to mimic humans too closely, which can almost make it seem creepy to humans, and that can impact trust. So to prevent these issues or eliminate them as we are working with AI, what we can do is make AI visible through different practices. And so the three practices I'm going to talk about are writing with AI technology, writing for AI, and writing about AI. In the last years, in the same conference last year, there was a lot of discussion on critical thinking and AI. And there were different talks looking at critical thinking differently. And there were two takeaways that I got. Criticism can work in two ways. One is to make something better. Second is to shut something down. In my classrooms, I try to use the former, which is to make something better. And looking at AI critically or making AI's role visible and helping students think critically about AI can help us get our students in AI development spaces more readily. So the first section or the first module in this is to think about writing with AI. So how is AI augmenting humans in writing practices? In that, the first project that I want to talk about is this rhetorical prompt engineering. And I know I've been hearing a lot about prompt engineering generally, and I do think that is a space that technical communicators and especially students can really enter as they're new and freshers in technical writing fields. So one of the research projects that I've done in the past with my collaborators, Marley Saravi and Aditya Shori, is about developing this generic formula for prompt engineering, which includes the formula consists of using all the different components of the rhetorical situation. I've only used Bitzer's rhetorical situation, although we have a long history of 50 years of thinking of rhetorical situation in different ways. So there is scope to improve this project or build upon best practice. However, I just wanted to get started on thinking about prompt engineering not as this best practice approach where you do a bunch of things to get one output and evaluate it and it looks good enough. I wanted to work on what I call this a generic formula for making sure that every time every time you prompt, you get the most effective output. So by showing students the role that they can play along with AI to generate effective content can be really helpful in helping them understand how important theory and the rhetorical foundations are and the contributions that they can make to generating content despite generative AI being there. The second project is about editing with AI. Again, another assignment which helps students see the role of AI in editing practices. So here I had this assignment where I asked students to generate a 300-word content block and edit that using the rhetorical grammar and other editing principles that we learned in the classroom. So students initially had this debate about AI replacing all editors in the world and the job not existing after a few years. But then they generated this content and then started using the principles to edit that content. They also evaluated the readability score before and after their editing was done. And the readability score had reduced, which helped them understand how the understanding of audiences that only technical communicators have, and being able to design content in a way that is more fitting and more suitable for those audiences is a skill that only they have. Although they can seek help from AI to write content or create some kind of um, starting point for the content that they want to generate. It doesn't need to be the ending point, and there is a lot of scope for writers to participate in that. Again, I've published this work in the book Tenet, which is an online collection available for free. The next assignment, again, or an activity that I design in class is for persona design to conduct audience analysis. And we use different tools to design personas that are available freely online. So because they're free, they may not be as effective. But then most of the tools do work in similar ways where they use a template of this sort, where they have the bio, goals of the user, motivations, themes, and some other features. And what I do is I help students to think to think beyond this template. And I have used the empathy mapping approach that Emma Costopoulos in the last year's conference had suggested. She took it from Jason Tam's design thinking book. And empathy mapping is where uh, get you think more about the audiences beyond what are more surface level characteristics like the demographics or the bio, the gender, and just the use of that product. Thinking about them as individuals, about real persons who are affected by their thoughts, by their motivations, and have other challenges in their life. Thinking about emotions and affect from a more socio-technical lens is super important. And getting them this holistic approach to designing personas in order to analyze audience can help them again see the challenges or limitations that AI tools have. The next part is, again, for writing for AI. Once we want to evaluate our writing, there is data analytics, which is a popular tool to see how your audience receive your writing. And AI tools such as, the natural language questions that you can ask data analytics are widely available today, and they're only getting better every day. And this is some work that I've done with my collaborator, Daniel Hawker. I started working on data analytics since 2019 during my dissertation writing, and then I've continued working on that just to include AI and the use of machine learning models in data analytics work. So you can see that data analytics, AI gives you a starting point to, again, understand some of the features of your audience, or just tries to tie together some of the different data points that data analytics provide. It can be a good starting point, again, for technical communicators who are overwhelmed with all the data that you're receiving from these powerful tools. But they may not be the endpoint because there are many other questions that are not answered here or that don't even appear, which we can help students think about and again, point out where AI could be useful and also some of the limitations of AI. Next, I'm moving to the writing for AI. Now, writing with AI was where the tool was just augmented to a human or a technical writer, and they were making use of the tool. Writing for AI is where we have, forever, we have been taught, on the foundational theory of technical writing is that you analyze your art, write for them. But we are moving on to this age where we are actually writing for algorithms, which will then find content and present them to the audience that they think or the algorithm thinks is the suitable audience. And personalization is something that I really am excited to work with because AI has changed the space of personalization a lot. We've always had content personalization. We call it conditional design or conditional content design, where there were tools like RoboHelp and Adobe FrameMaker, which allowed us to create conditional content, either for different roles, such as the developers or users, depending on who the user was, which guide they opened, which link they clicked. they could see a different content altogether. There were also the output was personalized for different browsers or different platforms such as Windows, Mac, and so on. Uh, uh, Now, because of the algorithms which are embedded and the cookies and all the data that gets stored and transferred, algorithms, especially AI and machine learning algorithms, are able to analyze who the user is exactly. For example, I use Overleaf all the time for a lot of my writing projects. And I do not sign in using my organizational institutional email, but I saw the suggestions which says that it looks like you're at Carnegie Mellon, so now you can log into the institution to get more features or more access to more features, which was I was interested in doing that, but at the same time, I was kind of freaked out that they knew that I was maybe a student or an academic of some sort. So now algorithms are not just detecting your browser or which platform, which machine you're using, but they're also being able to go more specific and deeper into analyzing who you are as a user, and then accordingly able to provide content and make changes to what they're showing up. Some of this work is in review right now in computers and composition, again with my collaborator Daniel Cocker. I'll read about it more once it comes out. Another space or another aspect of writing for AI is we've always used structured authoring and data for getting accuracy. Here I'm just showing this example of when all the documents look different. Structured authoring and data gave us a tool or a methodology to break it down into smaller topics to have all those topics look alike and also have the same structure sort of, and then also be able to reuse those topics because they have the granular structure. In writing for AI, a lot of times these smaller content blocks are getting pulled in different spaces. Generative AI is a tool or an algorithm or a method that works only on classifier systems, so they don't really understand language like humans do. We learn language through storytelling and listening to stories, so we have the context at all times. Whereas machine learning models do not have those, LLMs do not have that context. So what they do is they try to find out whatever appears along with the main keywords of a certain content section. Micro content is or the Google search that we do, which gives us this short description from a website or a short summary from any other web page that we need directly, so we don't have to go to the web page to find out more information. Is what gets pulled up here is the short description of which can be easily put into the data format. And we have been, again, doing this for a long time. Now we just have to do it more intentionally and consciously, knowing that we are not writing for the audience to pick it up or to read the short description before they can make a decision on whether they want to read the rest of the topic or not. We just want Google and these other algorithms to find the right content in the right context. Again, this is just an example of how it actually appears. Next, I just talked about classifiers and how LLMs classify different words in order to understand where they fall. And then when somebody poses a question, they just string all those words together. Um, and this is another task for information architects and content strategists to think about. And I've really liked what Microsoft had been doing with their documentation site for a long time. They introduced contributors so anybody could participate and add to the content that they had been publishing. So that is a form of feedback that they had introduced about 6 to 8 years ago. And then here, what I've now been seeing is they try to push all the types of content related to a certain topic on one page. So when ChatGPT or such LLM models are picking up on the content, they start classifying all of this content as being similar or being relevant to one another. So in this, they have different articles that are related to the same topic of development and continuous delivery, FAQs. You can see the training videos and training content on the right-hand side.
There's also documentation, which is relevant on the right-hand side of the bottom. And then in the left, you can see navigation, which is even more detailed than it used to be before. You can see that the topic sentences are way longer, or the topic headings are way longer than they used to be in the past. So just thinking about putting things together and how we can achieve that. Writing, next moving on to writing about AI. So now we looked at how we write for AI and AI algorithms. Next is writing about AI algorithms. Here I have just pulled up a few case studies for us to evaluate. The first one is ChatGPT, and I love the way ChatGPT does their documentation. They make sure that the user finds the documentation out and at the same time that they are doing some work. For example, they have this temporary chat feature that you can turn on and off. And then they also give this disclaimer that ChatGPT is experimental, or sometimes ChatGPT may not be accurate. So you should go and uh, check about this. They also give you the sources or the links from where they're pulling up information, and not always that it might all be accurate, but at least it helps to get, again, a starting point. Model cards is this big topic that I'm going to talk about next, because model cards is another great way of documenting AI algorithms where I think technical communicators can certainly participate, because this is something that we have done forever. I conducted a bit of a literature review on model cards and the research on model cards. My main findings from that were that they talk about all the researchers. Most of this research comes from the engineering field. A lot of them talk about users. So there are different, they either talk about stakeholders, reviewers, and all these different terms for users. Next, they talk about standards, and everybody has a different standard. If you've looked at AI documentation at all, you can look at them. They talk about consistency, explainability. There is something called FAIR principles. They're always coming up with abbreviations for the different kinds of standards that they want to establish for AI documentation. And finally, they talk about evaluation, like how do we test these standards once they have been implemented for model cards. And I want to argue that all of these methods, or all of these three different categories, are nothing but our roles, or what technical communicators have done forever. We've always started with user research or audience research. We've done writing and editing, and we have this whole foundational knowledge and a lot of literature that only specifies how can we be more, consistent and concise and have accessible content written and so on. Evaluation is where we get into the information design content strategy aspect, which come after once the content is developed. So I think looking at it more closely, we'll be able to participate in some of these conversations and contribute, like provide a lot to the arguments that they're already making, but from a more foundational, generic sense that can be long lasting and provide better outputs. To do that, I developed this heuristic, and I also developed an abbreviation, CACAO, CACAO. And but for that, I have used some of the principles that are in the Carey et al. Work that have been described in the Carey et al. Work. Carey et al. Have developed this book, and which has these great principles of technical writing, and they have constantly changed this. So I think there are at least 3 to 4 editions of this book starting in the 90s. And so it is really well suited for working in the age of the internet, but also in the age of structured authoring and all these newer advances that we've seen in the field of technical communication. The challenges with model cards are the lack of accessibility of them, and then the content and how the content is written. So the first one is completeness. I'm going to try to rush through this a little bit, and we can always come back. I'd like to rather give you examples, so you can rather than the definitions. It's fun to look at the examples. So completeness refers to providing all the information for the intended users and only giving them the information that they actually need. And anything extra can result in information overload, which we do not want. And so I was looking at some examples for completeness. You can see this is Miro is a tool that user researchers have been using a lot. It gives you a workspace to work on and all these different templates and tools for UX work. And so in their AI tool, they provide different user types that you can see at the very top. create with AI. There are 4 different categories of users. And then each of those categories give you a starting point on what exactly this tool will help you do. And they also give an example of the prompt or give you suggestions of where the prompt should appear and what kind of prompt should you provide. So now these are really good examples of making user interfaces self-documenting and only including information that helps the user. Now, this is the last part which I have a problem with Miro. They ask users to give feedback on this tool right then and there, which again is something that the users do not wish to see. And so having that there is problematic. And that is what completeness is, giving them what they need. Completeness also means conducting new research iteratively. For example, recently there has been research on calculating carbon emissions that Hugging Face has done. Elaborate research on that, and you can make calculations. There's a formula, there is a calculator that you can use to calculate how much carbon emission do some models cause. And they also provide a space, or they provide sort of a button almost on the model card where you can access it and also talk about it. So continuously doing this research on including new parameters to the existing model card is really important as we are documenting AI. Second is accuracy, verifying and maintaining the information, making sure it's effective but also accurate. For AI documentation, some of the new principles that I've added to the existing one are making sure that the data which is included for training, as well as data that's excluded, is documented. Talking about the limitations and risks of the models, thinking about ethical considerations and intended and unintended uses. A few years ago, Biden administration had released the executive order, which had asked for use cases to be documented as model cards. And I don't know where that is going in the current climate. But as a good practice, it is important to talk about who the intended use cases, what are the intended use cases, and what are the cases that the data or this model hasn't been tested on, so that people don't use the model for those cases, even though they look similar. So here's a model card template for making sure that the model card is more accurate. There is performance metrics, but there's also ethical considerations and intended use. Clarity is writing coherently, avoiding ambiguity, and making sure that you're showing readers what to do, showing them what is going on, rather than telling them each and everything. Here's some code that I had shared with my students when they were learning about ethical AI, and we had developed some models and tested them with some of the data that they re- had just downloaded from open access systems. Here we wrote messages or comments in each piece of code. Again, this is something that technical communicators can participate in, is actually creating documentation within the code itself, because all of this now is open access, being used for different types of training. A lot of models are open access that are just directly downloaded by users, and users are using them. But making sure that the documentation is where the user will be looking for it, which is in the code itself, is super important. And this is just one example of that. Accessibility is about, first of all, compatibility with assistive technologies. Um, op- so as you can see here, this is a Hugging Face model card published with Hugging Face. And there is this navigation which comes on and off if you move your cursor over it, which is not the great accessibility feature. Navigation always needs to sit there, because the specific technologies work where your keyboard should be able to access something, and the mouse hover feature is not really as useful. You can also see localization. There are 24 languages. So thinking about which languages work and which data it is trained on, and what is eliminated is important. And then what is also important for accessibility is making sure everything is open access, giving people open access to the code. Because if we don't give access to the code, that means that only the model creators know the data that went into the training, and can maybe sometimes reveal and sometimes not reveal what was there in the training. And it could be biased, it could lead to a lot of unethical issues. And so having access to the code at all times is important, and also getting user feedback. So opening up the user feedback for discussion is important. And Hugging Face again provides that feature. Whereas some other places that I have seen, like NVIDIA model cards or Google model cards, they do not provide this feature where users can provide feedback or participate in the discussion. Finally, organization, going back to how elements, where elements are placed and what can be most helpful. Putting information where users expect it is a big part of organization. There shouldn't be, so as you see this user persona tool that my students have used in class, just to get started with persona creation, it does not have any documentation. So they don't know when they're creating personas, they don't know what data it was trained on, what output should they expect, why they're only getting certain outputs, and how can they map some of the limitations of this tool to realistic situations and scenarios around them. Which is not great because this has no documentation whatsoever. On the other hand, there is this chatbot for creating your itinerary for vacations and so on. It has not only does it have all the links to how to book hotels or check into hotels and other sorts of features that you need, but it also has different icons and a very user-friendly, intuitive interface for providing information, such as the itinerary. They're using the right logos, they're using the right organization for that. And then they also allow you to download the transcript so it can be accessible and the conversation is not lost when you close the chatbot or if it gets closed accidentally. Oh, closing thoughts. I believe that teaching AI is not about teaching students to code. It is about helping them visualize and create situations and help them explore and find ways to navigate those situations. And I think classrooms provide the safe space where they can take risks and learn from those risks, and also discuss it with you where they can feel safe to talk about topics which may not be as safe out there in the world. Lastly, technical communicators can complement AI development in providing the socio aspect to the socio-technical environment of AI. Thank you.